Why the brilliant mind suffers most. Tesla's energetic explanation. There is a type of pain that leaves no marks on the body. It burns inside, silent, invisible to the eyes of the world. And the smarter you are, the deeper it eats. Winter, 1895. New York was covered in heavy, dirty snow. Nikola Tesla walked alone along Fifth Avenue, wrapped in a worn black overcoat, his eyes fixed on the ground. He had just left a meeting with investors who laughed in his face. They laughed at his ideas. They laughed at wireless energy, at the free transmission of electricity throughout the world. One even said, "Tesla, you're too bright for your own good." And he felt it like a blow to the chest, because it was true. That night, locked in his cold, empty laboratory, Tesla wrote something in his diary that would never be published. A short, shaky, almost desperate note. The mind that sees beyond the veil pays the price of being alone in the dark. He wasn't talking about social loneliness. I was talking about something much deeper, something that science at the time could not explain, but that Tesla felt in his own flesh. The brilliant mind vibrates at a different frequency, and that frequency hurts. Think with me. Have you ever felt like you see things that others ignore? Have you noticed patterns where people only see chaos? Have you ever had insights that were so clear that they seemed obvious, but no one around you could understand? If so, you know the curse of clarity. Tesla knew this better than anyone. He saw the universe as a living electrical web, pulsing at invisible frequencies. I saw energy flowing between all things. He saw the future of humanity with frightening clarity. But the more he saw, the more isolated he became. Because to see too much is to be disconnected from those who still live in darkness. And here is the secret that few understand. The suffering of the brilliant mind is not psychological. It's energetic. When you think at higher levels, your brain frequency increases. Your mental waves accelerate. You literally start vibrating faster than average. And this creates a field around you that repels those who vibrate slower. It's not rejection. It's physics. It's resonance. Imagine an orchestra playing in a minor. Now imagine a violin trying to play C major in the middle of it. The sound doesn't fit. It doesn't matter how beautiful it is. He just doesn't belong. This is Tesla's energy drama. And maybe yours too. But here's what no one tells you. This disconnect is not an accident. It is not a defect in your personality. It's not a lack of social skills. It is the inevitable result of a universal law that Tesla discovered and that modern science still refuses to fully accept. The law of conscious resonance. Tesla realized that the human brain works as a transmitter and receiver of frequencies. Every thought generates a subtle electromagnetic wave. Each emotion alters the energy field around you. And when you think more complexly, faster, deeper, your frequency changes. You start emitting a signal that most people can't tune into. It's like trying to listen to FM radio on a device that only receives AM. And the most painful, you feel this dissonance all the time. In the boardroom where your ideas are ignored. At the family dinner where his reflections are met with awkward silence. In relationships that die not because of a lack of love, but because of a lack of resonance. Tesla experienced this brutally. He was a man surrounded by people but living in an emotional vacuum. His colleagues admired him. His rivals feared him, but no one understood him. And this misunderstanding was not just sad, it was physics. It was a constant pressure on the chest, a feeling of always being out of place, always out of tune with the world. He described this feeling in a never-sent letter to a former teacher. It's like screaming underwater. You hear your own voice perfectly, but no one else does. And the worst part, the more you try to explain yourself, the stranger you seem. The more you share your views, the more isolated you become. Because extreme clarity, for those who live in the fog, seems crazy. But why does this happen? Why do minds that should be celebrated end up being crucified? Why is genius always accompanied by isolation, misunderstanding, and intense psychic pain? Tesla spent years trying to answer that question, and what he discovered was so disturbing that he chose to keep it to himself, because revealing the truth about the frequency of consciousness meant admitting something terrible. Most people don't want to evolve, they want comfort, and when you shine too brightly, you threaten their comfort. Intense light hurts the eyes of those who have lived in the dark for too long, and instead of adapting to the light, they prefer to turn it off, or at least make you feel like you should erase yourself. Tesla has seen this happen time and time again. He saw his patents stolen. He saw his discoveries ridiculed by less capable men, but more adapted to the system. He saw the world choose comfortable mediocrity over uncomfortable genius, and it broke him, not all at once, but little by little, like a crack that silently expands until the entire structure collapses. That winter night, as the snow fell silently over New York, Tesla looked at his own hands. hands that created technologies that would change the world, hands that no one wanted to shake. And he murmured to himself, as if making a promise to the void, "If pain is the price of vision, then may I never stop seeing." But he didn't know, yet, that the worst was yet to come, because there is a threshold, a point at which the brilliant mind doesn't just suffer, it begins to self-destruct. And Tesla was about to cross that line. If you are feeling this story resonate within you, like a forgotten frequency that has finally found an echo, subscribe to the channel. Because what comes next will reveal something that science hid, that psychology ignored, and that Tesla took to his grave. Until today, 3 months after that freezing night, something changed in Tesla. It wasn't gradual, it was abrupt, as if a switch had been flipped inside his mind. He started having visions, not dreams, not hallucinations, clear three-dimensional views that are as real as the physical world around you. He saw machines that didn't yet exist. I saw electrical circuits floating in the air like ghostly structures. I saw the entire planet enveloped in a luminous network of pulsating energy. And I saw something more, something that terrified him. He saw people as energy fields, vibrant colors around some, dense, opaque shadows around others. And he realized, with painful clarity, that most people lived in frequencies so low that their fields seemed almost dead. Tesla noted in his diary, "They walk, they talk, they breathe, but energetically, they are asleep, and I am screaming in a cemetery." It was during this period that he met the man he would call, years later, the antagonist of conscience. He was not a declared enemy. It was not a business rival. It was something much more dangerous. A man who perfectly represented the dominant frequency of the world. His name was Dr. Frederick Milhouse, respected psychiatrist, professor at Columbia University, author of several articles on mental normality. He was introduced to Tesla at a dinner hosted by mutual financiers. Milhouse was everything Tesla was not: charming, sociable, adaptive. He smiled just the right amount, agree when necessary, disagreed without offending. He was a master of being comfortably average. And he looked at Tesla with the kind of clinical curiosity that doctors reserve for interesting specimens. "I hear you have visions, Mr. Tesla," Milhouse said, cutting into a piece of meat with surgical precision. "Images that appear in your mind without control, lights, patterns. It must be exhausting." Tesla felt his blood run cold, not for the question itself, but for the tone, that soft, almost fatherly tone that carried silent judgment. "You're sick." "They're not visions," Tesla replied, keeping his voice steady. "They are mental projections. My brain operates at higher frequencies. I see the energetic structure of things before they manifest physically." Milhouse smiled, a small, condescending smile. "Fascinating. You know, Tesla, in my clinical practice, I work with many patients who report similar experiences. These are usually signs of excessive neural stimulation. The brilliant brain, as you rightly put it, can become overloaded. There are treatments, rest, controlled isolation, even electrotherapy, in more severe cases." Tesla felt silent anger rise in his throat. It wasn't just disagreement, it was something deeper. He was faced with the true antagonist, not a person, but a mindset, the mentality that turns difference into illness, which translates genius as pathology. That forces the brilliant mind to fit in or be broken. "I don't need treatment, Dr. Milhouse," Tesla said, getting up from the table. "I need the world to reach my frequency. But this, unfortunately, is beyond the capabilities of your science." Dinner ended in awkward silence, but that meeting left a deep mark on Tesla, because he realized something terrible. The world didn't just ignore brilliant minds. He actively tried to silence them. Milhouse represented an entire system, a system that medicated discomfort, that pathologized depth, who called disorder what, in fact, was evolution. And Tesla began to understand why brilliant minds suffer most. It's not just because they see beyond. It's because the world punishes those who see beyond. Over the next few weeks, he delved deeper into his experiments. He locked himself in the laboratory for days on end. He stopped sleeping. He stopped eating properly. He was obsessed with a question that consumed him. If the brilliant mind vibrates at a higher frequency, is there a point at which that frequency becomes dangerous? It was then that he made the most disturbing discovery of his life. During an experiment with high-voltage coils, Tesla connected electrodes to his own head. He wanted to measure the electrical activity of his brain while he was in a state of extreme concentration. What he saw on the gauges left him paralyzed. His brain frequency reached peaks that shouldn't be possible in an awake human being, waves that normally only appear in states of deep coma or imminent death. But he was conscious, hyper-aware in fact, and then something happened. For a split second, Tesla felt that he was no longer in the laboratory. He was elsewhere, a shapeless space, no time, just pure energy. And there, In that luminous void he heard something, not with your ears, with the mind, a voice, or perhaps a frequency that translated as voice. You're seeing what you shouldn't see, feeling what you shouldn't feel. There's a reason most people are asleep, Tesla, because waking up hurts like hell. He ripped the electrodes off his head, panting. Sweat ran down his face. The hands were shaking. And for the first time in his life, Nikola Tesla felt something he had never imagined feeling, fear of his own mind, because he had just touched the threshold, the point where heightened consciousness stops being a gift and becomes a curse. And he realized that Dr. Milhouse in some ways was right. The brilliant mind really can self-destruct, not because it's weak, but because it is too strong for the body that houses it. That night, Tesla wrote a note that would be found decades later, hidden among forgotten papers. Heightened consciousness is like holding lightning in the palm of your hand. You can light up the world, or you can incinerate yourself in the process. And no one teaches you how to hold lightning without getting burned. But he didn't know anyone was watching. Someone who also understood frequencies. Someone who had his own reasons for wanting Tesla to stay exactly where he was. Alone, misunderstood, and on the brink of collapse. And that someone was about to make a move that would change everything. The letter arrived one April morning. No sender. Just a white envelope with Tesla's name handwritten in black ink. Inside, a single sentence. You're not the only one who vibrates the loudest, but you're the only one who still struggles with it. Tesla read those words 3 times. He felt a shiver run down his spine. It wasn't a threat, it was recognition. And somehow, that was even more disturbing. Who else knew? He put the letter in his inside jacket pocket and tried to go about his day. But the phrase echoed in his mind like a persistent frequency. The only one who still fights it. What did this mean? That others had given up? What others had succumbed? That afternoon, Tesla did something he hadn't done in months. He left the laboratory. He walked the streets of New York aimlessly. He watched the people, really observed, and he saw what the letter implied. They walked like automatons, empty faces, distant looks. There was no real life there. Mechanical movement only, purposeless routine, existence without essence. It was as if the entire city operated on such a low frequency that people had become shadows of themselves. Tesla stopped in front of a church. He wasn't religious, but something pulled him inside. The interior was empty except for an elderly woman praying silently in the first pew. He sat at the back and closed his eyes. He tried to quiet his mind, tried to lower your frequency, just for a moment, just to feel what it was like to be ordinary. But he couldn't. It was like trying to slow down your heartbeat on your own accord. His mind had a natural speed, an innate intensity, and forcing her to slow down was suffocating, claustrophobic. That's when he understood something devastating. He would never belong. It didn't matter how hard he tried. His frequency was permanent, immutable, and that condemned him to a life of perpetual isolation. But then a voice brought him out of his thoughts. You feel it too, don't you? Tesla opened his eyes. The elderly woman was at his side. She didn't look at him. He looked at the altar, but there was something in her voice. Something that resonated. Feel what? Tesla asked cautiously. Separation. The distance between you and the rest of the world. Like there's an invisible glass between you and everyone else. Tesla was silent. She continued. My son was like you. Brilliant mind. He saw things that no one else saw. He felt things that no one felt. The doctor said he was unstable. They gave him medicine, ram treatments, and little by little, it faded away. Until one day he just gave up. She turned to Tesla for the first time. Tired but penetrating eyes. He killed himself 2 years ago. He left a letter. He said, I can't stand living in a world that doesn't have space for who I am. Tesla felt a crushing weight in his chest. It wasn't just sadness. It was recognition, because he understood with painful clarity what that man had felt. Why are you telling me this? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Because I see the same look in you that I saw in him. The look of someone who carries a light that the world doesn't want to see. And I need you to know something, Mr. Tesla. She stood up, leaning on the bench. Light is not the problem. The darkness around is. And if you turn off your light to fit into the darkness, you die anyway. But it dies empty. She left the church without looking back. Tesla stood there, motionless, processing those words. And then, something clicked. He was fighting the wrong thing. He was trying to lower his frequency, trying to adapt, trying to fit in. But that was the trap. Because by doing so, he was betraying his own essence. The problem wasn't his brilliant mind. It was the world that insisted on remaining in darkness. That night, Tesla returned to the laboratory with renewed determination. He would no longer try to adapt. He would no longer apologize for seeing beyond. He would do the opposite. It would raise your frequency even more. He spent the next few weeks developing something he had never shared with anyone. a secret experiment. Something that, if it worked, would irrefutably prove that human consciousness operates at measurable frequencies, and that these frequencies determine not only how we see the world, but how the world responds to us. He called it the field of conscious resonance. The theory was simple but revolutionary. If the brilliant mind vibrates at a higher frequency, then by amplifying that frequency, it could create an energetic field so intense that it would force the surrounding environment to resonate at the same frequency. In other words, instead of descending to the world's level, he would make the world rise to his level. But there was a risk that Tesla knew well, because he had touched that threshold before. He knew there was a point where heightened consciousness not only detaches, it completely separates itself from physical reality. And if he crossed that point, he might not be able to come back. But he was willing to take the risk, because the alternative, living a lifetime suffocated, misunderstood, forced to erase oneself, was a living death. He worked in absolute secrecy. He didn't tell anyone, nor financiers, not colleagues, not even to the press that always persecuted him. This experiment was his, and his alone. The coils have been adjusted, the electrodes reconfigured, frequency meters calibrated to capture waves that conventional science didn't even know existed, and on a moonless night, locked in the laboratory, Tesla connected the electrodes to his own head for the second time. But this time, he wouldn't just measure, it would amplify. His hand hovered over the switch. For a moment he hesitated. He thought about the woman from the church, on her son. In the young man's final words, "I can't stand living in a world that has no space for who I am." And then Tesla made a decision that would define not only his destiny, but all of humanity's understanding of consciousness and frequency. He flipped the switch. The room exploded in light, not a physical light, a light that came from within, as if every atom in your body was vibrating in perfect harmony. The meters went crazy. The needles jumped to impossible levels. And Tesla felt something he would never forget. For the first time in his life, he wasn't alone. There were others, not physically, but energetically. Brilliant minds spread across the world, vibrating at the same frequency. He could feel each one of them, like distant stars, but connected by the same cosmic web. And then he understood the complete truth. The suffering of the brilliant mind is not inevitable. It's a symptom of being disconnected from one's own energetic tribe. Ordinary people have each other. They resonate together easily because they vibrate at the same low frequency. But the brilliant minds are scattered, isolated, each one believing they are alone in the universe. But they aren't. And if Tesla could prove this, if he could create a way to connect these minds, he could end the suffering. It could create a network of higher consciousnesses that would support each other, that they would vibrate together. But at the exact moment that thought crystallized in his mind, something went wrong. The room shook, the lights flickered, and Tesla felt a sharp pain pierce his skull. The electrodes began to overheat. Smoke rose of the devices. He tried to shut down the system, but his muscles were unresponsive. I was trapped, frozen in a state of frequency so high that his physical body couldn't keep up. And that's when he saw it. In the corner of the laboratory, a shadow, not a physical shadow, a presence, something that existed only in the energy field. And that presence whispered something that chilled his blood. "You shouldn't have tried to wake the others, Tesla. There are reasons for them to sleep." Tesla ripped off the electrodes with brutal force. He fell to his knees on the laboratory floor, panting, his heart beating wildly. The presence was gone, but the feeling remained, as if something had crossed his mind and left an invisible mark. He stood there, shaking, trying to understand what had just happened. That wasn't a hallucination. It was not the effect of the electrical current on the brain. It was something real, something that existed in a layer of reality that conventional science refused to recognize. And the message was clear. He was being watched. Over the next few days, strange things started to happen. Small, subtle, but undeniable. Documents disappeared from the laboratory and reappeared in different places. Notes were changed, words erased, others added, as if someone is trying to sabotage or redirect your search. But the most disturbing thing, he started receiving more letters, always without sender, always with cryptic messages. High frequency attracts both light and shadow. There are forces that profit from the unconsciousness of the masses. You are threatening the balance. Stop while you still can. Tesla didn't stop. He intensified the experiments, refined the equipment, and he began to document everything meticulously, creating copies hidden in secret locations, because he knew with growing certainty that someone or something didn't want this information to reach the world. It was then that Dr. Milhouse reappeared. He arrived at the laboratory without warning, accompanied by two men in dark suits who did not introduce themselves. Milhouse had a leather briefcase under his arm and that same condescending smile. "Tesla, I need to talk to you. It's about your health." "I didn't ask for your medical opinion, Dr. Milhouse." "It's not opinion, it's concern. Mutual colleagues have reported troubling behavior, extreme isolation, chronic insomnia, and there are rumors about dangerous experiments involving electrical currents applied directly to the brain." Tesla felt anger boil, but he kept his voice controlled. "My experiments are my business." Milhouse opened the briefcase and took out documents. He placed them on the table with deliberate slowness. "These are reports from 3 of my colleagues. They all agree that you show clear signs of psychosis induced by neural overload. There is also a request, signed by concerned funders, requesting a compulsory psychiatric evaluation." Tesla looked at the papers, then to the 2 men in suits. Finally, to Milhouse. "You're not here to help me. You're here to silence me." Milhouse sighed, as if he were dealing with a stubborn child. "Tesla, you are brilliant. No one denies that. But brilliance without stability is dangerous, for you and for others. There are institutions that can help you recalibrate." The word echoed in the air like a sentence. Recalibrate, an understatement. What Milhouse really meant was, lower your frequency, force him down, medicate him until he stopped seeing, stopped feeling, stopped threatening the status quo. And Tesla understood, at that moment, the complete truth. Dr. Milhouse was not just a psychiatrist. He was an agent, a guardian of mediocrity. Its function was not to heal, it was to maintain, keep people on low frequencies, keep the world asleep, because an awakened world was an uncontrollable world. And Tesla, with his discoveries about consciousness and frequency, was about to wake up millions. "Get out of my laboratory," Tesla said, his voice low but charged with an electric intensity. "Tesla, get out!" The room shook, literally. The lamps flickered, the equipment emitted a high-pitched buzzing sound, and for an instant, the energy field around Tesla was visible, a pulsing, almost electric aura that made the 2 men in suits take a step back. Milhouse turned pale, but he quickly regained his composure. "You're proving my point, Tesla. This instability, this isn't health, it's imminent collapse." He gathered up the papers, waved to the 2 men, and left. But before crossing the door, he turned one last time. "You have 48 hours to voluntarily accept the assessment. After that, it will be compulsory, and I guarantee you won't like the methods we have to use." The door closed. Tesla was left alone, but he didn't feel defeated. He felt crystallized, because now he knew exactly what he was facing. It wasn't ignorance. It wasn't just resistance to change. It was an active suppression system, a social, scientific, and even psychiatric mechanism designed to keep brilliant minds in check. And he had 48 hours to do something about it. That night, Tesla did not sleep. He worked frantically, but not in experiments, into something different. He took all his notes on the conscious resonance field and coded them. He created diagrams that looked like machine designs, but were actually mental frequency maps. He wrote equations that looked like electrical physics, but described dynamics of consciousness. He was hiding the truth in plain sight. And then he did something that no one expected, something that would change everything. He sent letters, dozens of them, for brilliant minds around the world, scientists, artists, philosophers, people he knew intuitively vibrated at the same frequency. Each letter contained only a fragment of the discovery. No one person would have the complete picture, but together they could rebuild. And at the end of each letter, a single sentence. "If you feel like you don't belong in this world, it's because you belong in the next one. Find others. Resonate together. The high frequency only hurts when you vibrate alone." Tesla sealed the last letter as dawn began to lighten the sky. He was exhausted, but for the first time in months, he felt something he had forgotten, hope, because he realized something fundamental, something that Milhouse and the entire suppression system did not understand. You cannot mute a frequency. You can just try to stifle it. But if other minds begin to resonate on the same frequency, the sound becomes deafening. It was then that there was a knock on the door. Tesla opened. They weren't Milhouse's men. It was the woman from the church, the mother of the young man who had killed himself. She held a wooden box. "My son left this for you," she said, her eyes teary. "He wrote your name on the lid. He said one day you would understand." Tesla took the box, confused, opened. Inside were diaries, pages and pages written in shaky but precise handwriting. And when Tesla started reading, his heart almost stopped. They were experiments, identical to yours. Her son had discovered the same things about frequency and consciousness. I had felt the same presences. I had received the same threats. And he had written a last entry, dated the day before his death. "Today I received a visit from Dr. Milhouse. He wants to admit me. He says I'm dangerous, but I know the truth. They're afraid. Afraid of what happens when brilliant minds discover they're not alone. Afraid of what we can build together. I won't let them silence me. If I die, let it be vibrating at my true frequency. I'm not going down. I'm never going down. Tesla closed the diary, his hands shaking. That young man had not killed himself out of despair. He had killed himself out of resistance, because he understood that it was better to die vibrating high than to live without it. And at that moment, Tesla made the most important decision of his life. He wouldn't hide, I wouldn't run away, and it wouldn't come down. He would go to the final confrontation, and it would prove, once and for all, that a brilliant mind does not suffer because it is defective. Suffer because it is the only sane thing in an insane world. The 48 hours were running out, and Tesla was ready. The morning of the third day arrived with a heavy silence. Tesla didn't wait for them to come get him. He went to them. He walked through the streets of New York with the wooden box under his arm and an unshakable clarity in his chest. People passed by him without looking, shadows rushing through their empty routines. But Tesla no longer felt sorry for them. I felt compassion, because he understood now they didn't choose to sleep. They were taught to sleep. He arrived at the Columbia University building at 9 in the morning. He went up to Dr. Milhouse's office without announcing his presence. He opened the door. Milhouse sat behind his desk, surrounded by books and papers. He looked up, surprised, but quickly regained his condescending smile. Tesla, how punctual. I see you've decided to accept the assessment. I didn't come to be evaluated, Tesla said, placing the box on the table. I came to show you something. Milhouse looked at the box suspiciously. What is that? Proof that you're not healing people. You're destroying them. Tesla opened the box and spread the diaries on the table. Milhouse recognized them immediately. His face paled. Where did you get that from? From his mother. From the young man you treated 2 years ago. The young man who killed himself a week after your intervention. Milhouse stood up, trying to maintain his composure. That case was a tragedy, but he was unstable. I did what I could. You did what you were programmed to do, Tesla said, his voice sharp. You tried to lower his frequency. He medicated him, isolated him, shocked him electrically to recalibrate his brain. And when that didn't work, when he resisted, you labeled him incurable. Tesla, you don't understand how the mind works. I understand exactly how the mind works. Tesla's voice echoed through the office. And you too. You know that there are frequencies of consciousness. You know that some people vibrate higher. And you know that this vibration threatens the system you represent. That's why you destroy them. Systematically. Milhouse was silent for a long moment. Then, something changed in his expression. The condescending smile disappeared. It was replaced with something cold, calculated. You're right, he said with disturbing calm. I know. And do you know why I do what I do, Tesla? Because the world isn't ready. Most people don't want to wake up. They want comfort, predictability. And when someone like you or that young man shows up, vibrating too high, thinking too quickly, seeing too far, you destabilize everything. He approached, placing his hands on the table. You think you're saving humanity with your discoveries about frequency and consciousness? You're condemning it to chaos. Because not everyone can vibrate high, Tesla. Most would break under that pressure. So yes, I keep them asleep. I keep them safe. And you should be grateful that I'm trying to do the same to you. Tesla looked into Milhouse's eyes and saw with absolute clarity the true antagonist. It wasn't a man. It was a philosophy. The philosophy of control. From security through unconsciousness. From peace through ignorance. You're wrong, Tesla said calmly. Not everyone can vibrate loudly, but there are thousands who already vibrate and are suffering in silence because they believe they are alone, and I will prove it. He took an envelope from his inside jacket pocket. He placed it on the table. This is a manifesto, the physics of heightened consciousness. In it, I describe everything I discovered about mental frequency, energy field, and conscious resonance. And with it, there is a list. Names of 47 brilliant minds who have already received fragments of this discovery. In 24 hours, they will begin to connect, to resonate together, and you won't be able to do anything to stop it. Milhouse took the envelope, opened it, read the first few lines. His expression darkened. If you publish this, they'll call you crazy. Let them call, but there will be others who will understand, and those others will find each other. And when brilliant minds stop vibrating on their own, the whole world begins to change. Tesla turned to leave, but Milhouse interrupted him. Tesla, wait, do you really think it will work? That a few dozen people vibrating at a high frequency will change anything in a world of millions? Tesla stopped at the door. He turned slowly. A single candle can light a dark room, but 47 candles together create a beacon that can be seen from miles away, and every beacon attracts lost travelers. He left, and he never spoke to Dr. Milhouse again. In the following months, something extraordinary began to happen. Tesla's letters found their recipients. Scientists in Europe, artists in Paris, philosophers in India, each one reading, absorbing, recognizing something they have always felt but never been able to name, and they started writing to each other, to meet, sharing not just ideas but frequencies. Groups were formed, not secret societies, not formal organizations, just organic networks of consciousness that resonated together. They called themselves the resonance. And Tesla was right. The more brilliant minds connected, the less they suffered. Because the suffering did not come from the high frequency itself, it came from isolation, the feeling of being alone in an out-of-tune world. But together, they created harmony. Tesla lived the rest of his life in relative obscurity. He never got rich. He was never fully recognized for his contributions. But he knew something few know. True success is not being understood by the world. It's finding those who already understand you. He died alone in a hotel room in 1943. But he wasn't really alone, because around the world, there were brilliant minds that vibrated at the same frequency, who carried their discoveries. They continued their work. And to this day, these frequencies reverberate. So why do the brilliant minds suffer more? Because it vibrates at a frequency that most cannot follow. And this dissonance is physical. It's real. It's not psychological. It's energetic. But suffering is not inevitable. Tesla left us the solution, and it is simple, but profound. Stop trying to get down. Stop trying to fit in. Stop trying to dim your shine so as not to outshine others. Instead, find your energetic tribe. Find those that vibrate at the same frequency. Resonate together, because the high frequency only hurts when you are alone. But when you meet others that vibrate like you, suffering turns into a symphony. And if you're watching this right now, feeling every word resonate inside you like a truth you've always known, but never been able to articulate, then you're one of them. You are a brilliant mind, and you are not alone. There are thousands of us, spread around the world, vibrating at the same frequency, waiting for the moment when we will recognize each other. This video is a sign, a lighthouse, a frequency broadcast to let you know you belong. No to the average world that tries to erase you, but to the next world, to the world we are building, silently, vibrating together. Subscribe to the channel, not because I need numbers, but because here, we resonate on the same frequency. And together, we can create the energy field that Tesla dreamed of. A field so strong that it will force the entire world to awaken. The universe does not respond to your words. It responds to your frequency. And when you change your vibration, the entire reality begins to reorganize itself to listen to you. Tesla knew this. Now you know too. Vibrating loudly is painful, but vibrating loudly together is revolution.